Hello and welcome everybody. Welcome to our Platform Academy. This is our 21st session in this series. Today I am joined by Jason Lefever and we'll be talking about getting started with Playbook Experience. A couple of you have already joined us 4 weeks ago when we talked you through Process Automation Designer. Today is a more exciting day even because today is early access day of our new release Tokyo. A couple of you may have already seen what's new in Tokyo in the Techno episode. If you haven't yet and you want to check it out in the forum of this academy and ask us questions, please join us in 2 weeks when we'll be going through what is new on the Now platform in the Tokyo release. We will cover all kinds of platform features like ATF, but also some more process automation designer news. We'll talk about news for these 2 products today because we finally can, and we'll cover the rest of the products in 2 weeks. So make sure to sign up and to join us for the next Platform Academy. So much for the first introduction. We're very excited about our new release. I hope you like our improvements. My name is Lisa Hohenstein. I'm an outbound product manager for workflow automation. I've been working with the Now platform for over 6 years now. I joined in the Helsinki release, so this is very exciting to see the alphabet almost coming to a close. And I've been with ServiceNow for about 3.5 years, so that puts me in the corner of, I think it was the Madrid release, or even before, maybe London. I'm joined by my amazing colleague, as I said, Jason Lefever. Please give a quick introduction to yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. As Lisa mentioned, I'm Jason Lefever. I represent the workflow automation team within the platform product management organization. I've been with ServiceNow for just over a year now, but 15 years in technology, and I love all things workflow automation. So happy to be here and talk about some of the cool stuff we have going on in the Playbook space.
Oh yeah, me too. Thank you so much for joining. We also have my lovely colleague, Andrew Barnes. He's keeping our backs free, so he'll be chatting with you, answering questions. If you have any questions about the products we're showing today or the features, please put them in the Q&A channel and share with us if you find anything would be useful for your use cases. Share those things in chat, and we'll love to have an engaging session. All right, I still have the safe harbor notice in here, but all of our forward-looking statements are actually released today, so we don't need this much. So I'll just skip over this. All right, we have a rather simple agenda today. We did the introductions. We'll be speaking about Playbook Experience. We'll have some teaser and info about what has been added to Playbook Experience in the past, but also what is new in Tokyo for Playbook Experience, but also Process Automation Designer. And then we'll give a small demo before we head into the Q&A section and then wrap up this session. Some simple abbreviations that we may be using, and you may find us here use those. It's PAD for Process Automation Designer, PD sometimes for Process Definition, PE for Playbook Experience, and of course FD for our beloved Flow Designer, because we're all flow advocates, right? And because we all love our workflows so much, we always like to remember what the basic and the fundamental idea of the Now platform is. And that is Fred Luddy, who created ServiceNow in 2004 with the idea to create a digital workflow development platform for everyone. And Bill McDermott is our CEO, or has been our CEO for the past couple of years, and he loves to emphasize that for a great experience, we always need a great workflow. So that is what our workflow automation products are designed to do. They're there for you to be able to create engaging experiences to your agents, to your end users, to your customers, whoever is your target audience. And we find that to get into that, we have some problem statements that we want to talk through. We already went through the problems that you have in your backend. So the problem statement that we wanted to solve with Process Automation Designer is that there was no one tool to cover cross-enterprise workflows. And on the experience side, we find that oftentimes there's a lack of visibility. So the agents, the customers, whoever's using the Now platform as an end user must click in and out of related lists to get all of the info that they need to resolve a task. They don't easily see where in the process or where in the workflow they currently are. And they don't know what's the next step. So they don't know which fields they need to fill, what nodes they have to fulfill, what info they need to inquire from their caller. And all of those things are problems that we want to solve with Playbook Experience. So the idea is Playbook Experience was designed to give you a way to visualize, but also to interact with business process workflows in real time so that there's a simple and task-oriented view. We also want to make sure there's a consistent response to commonly encountered situations so that when you have agents who are working a case, they will be guided through the whole process, the whole life cycle of the workflow. They know when to gather which information, they know when to send out certain emails, manual or automated, they know when to gather approvals. And then with our additions in San Diego, they can also ad hoc add more activities to their process as it runs. We've already touched upon this before. We want to make sure that you're aware that Process Automation Designer and Playbook Experience are two sides of the same coin. We can use Playbook Experience with other supporting architecture. For example, I think HR lifecycle events can also be represented in Playbooks. But the most common use case will probably be to create a process in Process Automation Designer and then create and surface that process in a configurable workspace with Playbook Experience. There's always a one-to-one relationship. We have a process definition that is represented as a playbook. There's a lane in PAD that will be seen as a stage in the Playbook Experience, the Playbook component. And then, of course, each individual activity will also be shown as a card in the Playbook. I think this was the point where we wanted to do our handoff. So over to you, Jason. Please take us through the history of Playbook Experience and some of the new fun stuff.
Absolutely. So both Playbook Experience and Process Automation Designer were released in the Paris family release. So for the first time, Playbook was presented as a sequence of steps that agents can follow as they're working on tasks within a workspace. In Quebec, we introduced support for presenting multiple playbooks for the same record. So if there are multiple avenues or multiple sequences of steps that an agent should take to resolve a task, we present multiple playbooks as needed, as well as integration with UI Builder. So that investment in the integration with UI Builder carries forward to today, where we support any features that are available within UI Builder. We can surface any of those types of configurations and experiences within a playbook component. In the Rome release, we provided support for record generators. So rather than having to instantiate an incident or a task and then run your playbook, you can actually create your record as you're running your playbook. And then most recently within San Diego, custom activity UIs, this really unlocks the power of UIB, allowing you to really imagine beautiful experiences, whether it's embedding images within your playbook cards, displaying maps, deep linking, the sky's the limit. We also introduced ad hoc or optional activities. This allows your agents to dynamically insert activities within a running process from a pre-configured list of available activities. Now, given that it's EA Day, we're very excited to start to talk about some of the new features we've introduced with the Tokyo family release. So for this
Release
release,
day. We
yeah,
always love release days. It's awesome. We
Yep.
finally get to share with you.
Yep, we don't have to talk so cryptically anymore. So for Process Automation Designer, this release was really focused on further empowering our citizen developers, our no or low code personas that are not going to be doing any really sophisticated development. What we've done in the Process Automation Designer experience is we've exposed our experience properties for the first time. What this does is it allows your citizen developers to not only take advantage of out-of-the-box activity definitions, but for the first time, they can actually configure the experiences that are going to be surfaced in the playbook. So this is really a great improvement. Again, really encouraging citizen developers to jump in and take an active role in defining and maintaining enterprise processes. We've also introduced a duplicate feature for process definitions. So for anyone that has existing processes and wants to spin up a new one very quickly, you can take an existing process, duplicate it, which essentially creates a copy, make any necessary tweaks to that process definition, and very quickly take that process to production as need be. So I've spoken with customers that have very ambitious goals for spinning up new processes every quarter. And so this accelerates the time to, bring a new process definition to production.
I wonder, would this also work with order guide sequences? Because I can see catalog be a vast potential for copying and then just adjusting small things for catalog items.
Yeah. So we are currently in discussions with our service catalog team to size the lift and plan for supporting catalog within Process Automation Designer. So that's a future family release outcome. We're doing our due diligence as we speak.
Awesome, thank you.
Sure. On the playbook side, Tokyo was really about driving some performance improvements. So for anyone that is configuring playbooks within San Diego, we did take a little bit of a performance hit due to our activity UI feature. So we did some performance tuning within the Tokyo family release to drive a better administrative experience within Playbook. A couple of features that we introduced are auto advanced stages. So this will bring a user automatically to the next available stage within the Playbook without having to manually click into it. So this is an improvement to kind of navigating through a Playbook. I also like to call out that we do maintain WCAG compliance whenever we introduce new playbook features. So certainly accessibility is always at the top of mind. So we introduced auto advanced stages and have maintained our WCAG compliance while doing so. And then finally, we converted our data brokers to a proxy data broker. So all of the playbook out of the box components will take advantage of these new proxy data brokers, essentially simplifying the admin experience for configuring and embedding playbooks within configurable workspaces. Lisa, I think we have one more slide on feature content. So another happy moment for me with our Tokyo release. Playbook Experience has been on the App Store for about a year now. But for the first time, Process Automation Designer has joined the party. So with the Tokyo release, we have brought our first Process Automation Designer store release to the fold. And what we've done is released a number of out-of-the-box activity definitions for consumption. So the first category is really augmenting our commonly encountered process activities. So this is kind of core functionality within Process Automation Designer to allow a couple of different flavors of approvals, display approval information, create child records, just really giving, again, our citizen developer community some out-of-the-box content so that it's really about plug and play as opposed to modifying flows, modifying activity definitions for your specific use cases. So this should, again, speed up the time to define and publish to production your new process definitions. We also released a couple of Spoke related store apps as well. So
those sure come in handy, I bet.
Absolutely.
You don't have to set them up yourself. Do you have to do some credentials setting when you set them up?
Yes.
Probably.
So as part of making use of the DocuSign and Adobe Sign, as well as Teams and Slack integrations from Automation Engine, there are documented procedures for authentication and setting up profiles and such. Those are common and required for even if you're not using these activity definitions. But the PAD content essentially brings these integration hub spokes into pre-built activity definitions again, so someone can simply drop these activities within a process and very quickly start collecting digital signatures and sending messages via a couple of commonly used messaging platforms.
That sounds really, really cool and very useful.
Yeah.
Is there sorry for interrupting you there. Is there, when I look at the approval definitions, those can surely be copied and then adjusted if your approvals are slightly different, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome.
So they're generic in nature so that, you know, if in one example, your agent requires his or her manager to approve to proceed within the process, you can configure it to identify the agent's manager. Or on the flip side of that, if it's your requester, your end customer or end user, that their manager has to approve something, you can also dot walk to the requester's manager in order to get the assignment request or the approval request appropriately assigned to the manager.
That sounds very useful. Maybe before we head into the recap, we have a first chat. Andrew asked people if they are using Process Automation Designer yet, and if not, what's stopping them. So the first chat, Laszlo says it's mostly due to lack of awareness. That's what we're here for. So we want to help you get started. And then the use cases have been too abstract. So that is a good idea to join us. So we can give you, hopefully we can give you some ideas on how to get started with this. Awesome. Yeah,
and it looks like there was an additional comment here. Totally agree with your sentiments there. I think Lisa and Andrew and I are all on a mission to bring more exposure to this part of our platform and these features. Every time we have conversations, there is positive energy around getting started and trying it out. And so it's just really taking that energy and the positive message that we have to bring in and bringing it to scale. So we're definitely working on some content that can be consumed by the masses to get the word out.
Absolutely. All right. There's one question in the Q&A panel. Andrew is currently typing an answer, but I also want to put it out here. The question is, does this use Flow Designer on the backend, or is this separate from Flow Designer? And the answer is absolutely yes. Flow Designer is the foundation for Process Automation Designer. Any of the activities that you see, they run on a flow. There's a subflow, flow action behind it, and you can configure those, create your own, and then add an experience to show them to the end user, to the agent.
Absolutely. And so one of the design patterns that we're encouraging process authors and engineering teams to consider is build reusable, purpose-built flows and subflows don't necessarily build your entire process into a comprehensive flow, because that will generate some additional overhead when it comes to maintaining those flows. Any knowledge transfer to new teams that take over responsibility for those flows, it'll be more difficult to understand what's going on. Building your process by sequencing these purpose-built flows and subflows within Process Automation Designer not only improves kind of ease of maintenance of those processes, because you're not having to pull apart a comprehensive flow. You can really drag and drop, reorder, modify each of these discrete process steps as you need to. And as I mentioned earlier in the call, enabling our citizen developers to have a more and more meaningful contribution. And so that includes building processes from the ground up, but also maintaining them as businesses change.
Yeah. And that brings us to a recap of what we think Playbook Experience is all about. So the idea is for our workflows, our large cross-enterprise workflows, to be simple to organize, to make it easier to connect services that span your whole organization. So maybe it's a process that starts in customer service and then goes through IT and lands up in, in accounting. Those big processes, those are great examples. One of the most common type of processes that we see here are any kinds of onboarding processes. So be that a new customer, a new client, a new employee. So anytime you onboard or also offboard some person or entity, it's bound to be a complex process, and those are predestined to go into Process Automation Designer. Process Automation Designer and Playbooks make those processes more simple to modify. You will have context-aware rules for any specific requirements. Any of the activities that you add to the process can be conditional, can be timed, can start after another or in parallel. And it will also make it much more easy to see how your services connect, how your process connects, the different activities go together in the phases, and how those services are being rendered to the end user. We have some more details on the different parts of process of Playbook Experience. Now I'm getting confused. The most important part for Playbook Experience, which is, as the name said, is the experience side of your process. It's highly configurable. So you can, in the experience settings of your activity, you can override pretty much anything. You can determine how the form displays, if the SLAs will be shown on the card. You can define custom activity UIs with UI Builder. You can have specific state mappings. So state mappings, I think, are if you have different tasks, and in one of them, like 4 is the closed state, and in the other one, 7 is the closed state, you can map them throughout your process and make sure that they fit together. You can add decorative actions, which is a kind of UI action. It's buttons on the cards that take an action within your component or to the server or within the client, depends on how you configure those. You can switch between different layouts. You can have it full or condensed. You can have it in the sidebar of your workspace or as its own tab. There are so many different options that you can add. But the most important part, you can also just get started. So all of those options are absolutely optional, and you can start with the global experience settings and just go from there. So it's not mandatory to configure all of those things. You can just use what we supply and then get started from there. And then the second part to this, of course, is what we mentioned before. Playbook Experience is now is integrated into Process Automation Designer. So this is a new Tokyo feature, and we will show this in our live instance in a minute. But before, you would have to open this in a Jelly form or go to the backend to configure your experience properties. we have changed this and brought it to the forefront to process automation designers. So it's now more easily possible to configure those automation and those experience settings directly in the design space. So as you can see in my in the presentation here in the screenshot, you can define which record fields should be showing. You can define what's shown in the footer or which form view, which fields to show. But you can also jump out to the regular view and change all of the rest. Then I'll continue over to the custom activity UIs. Jason has already given us a bunch of examples earlier. So you can add pretty much anything that you can add in UI Builder is what you can add to custom activity UIs. So you can add different images. You can use any of the existing components and just drag and drop them. I'll have a small demo of that as well. If you want to learn how to do this and get started on your own, I want to recommend at this point the CreatorCon labs that are created for this year's knowledge. They're available on the developer side and in Now Learning. They will provide you with instances, and you can test out how to create those custom activity UIs as well. They're linked in the resources of this presentation. All right, would you like to give us some words on the next two slides? Those are record generator and declarative actions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned this as we were talking through our roadmap and kind of the history of Playbook Experience. So basically, when configuring a record generator, no longer do you need to instantiate your record in order to run your playbook. That's how the mode of operation is if you haven't configured a record generator. For example, you instantiate your incident. Once the incident has been created, the trigger condition to run the process and surface the playbook has been met. However, when configuring a record generator, you essentially replace the need to instantiate the incident. You can actually start running your playbook before you've even created your incident, complete the initial step, and upon completion of that first activity within your playbook, you instantiate your incident. So again, ease of kind of navigating through your playbook, getting your agents immediately into the experience and following the sequence without having to navigate through a comprehensive, maybe complex form. And then the next one on declarative actions. So we have three different types of declarative actions, and we'll show this as we preview a playbook in our demo briefly. So you have playbook actions, which allow you to do things like cancel your playbook, stage actions, where we'll demonstrate things like optional activities and the ability to add an activity to a running process. And then Lisa mentioned before, activity actions, which are your buttons that are on your playbook activity card. So those can be configured based on the business requirement and can essentially do whatever you need, whether it's mark complete, skip, cancel, show a list, render a map. The sky's the limit.
That's right. And speaking of optional activities, this is a new feature in San Diego. It's still slightly hidden in the configuration, but again, the CreatorCon labs go through how to do this. So don't be alarmed by this. Just follow the instructions and you'll get there. But I want to say that optional activities or ad hoc activities are insanely useful. How often is it that you have a process and your agents tell you, but I have to do this step just sometimes, and there's just no rule that you can identify when they have to do that step. Most of the time we'll want to standardize processes. We'll want to figure out what are the conditions, when are they taking certain steps. But there are just some use cases that you will never be able to really identify or really put your finger on them. And to not clog the experience, you can make those optional and then have the agent decide at which point of your process, in which lane, or even in which phase they want to use it, because these can be either per lane or you can make them available to the whole playbook. So they're not restricted to any given phase if you configure them to be so. And that's already all that I had to say here. And then we'll jump over and I'll hand over the controls to Jason.
Thanks, Lisa. So the first thing I'm going to do is jump into Process Automation Designer. What we'll do is show an example incident response process, and then we'll talk about some of the new features with Tokyo EA, and then we'll preview what running through the playbook for this process would look like. So a couple of things as we jump into the landing page. This is the first place where you see the opportunity to duplicate a process. So you can see here I've got a disabled duplicate button. I'll talk through how to enable it. So if I select a process here, I can now duplicate this process. Again, the use case being if this incident response demo process definition is something that I want to use maybe as a template and make some small tweaks to it and then quickly spin up a new process, I can essentially copy it. So we've got some default values here, but you can update your label as needed, provided an application scope, a description, and then away you go. It'll duplicate your process and then take you into the designer for that duplicated process. You can see here. So I'm going to back out of this one and jump into my actual incident response demo. So this is an example of how a help desk may work through receiving an incident and then ultimately resolving it. Each of these process lanes, groups like work together into a logical grouping of topics. And then each of these.
Jason, can you maximize the window?
Yes. All right. So
thank you.
As I was saying, no problem. Each of these activity cards here represents a process step, again, powered by a flow or a subflow. You can see that we have linkage out to Flow Designer should you need to make any modifications to the underlying flow or subflow. With our Tokyo release, we have reworked our configuration side panel to not only expose the automation inputs and configuration for the flow or subflow that's powering these activities. We also added the experience tab here, again, allowing your low-code user to meaningfully contribute to the configuration of not only your process in terms of defining the steps, but also the end user experience as they work through a playbook. So there's another opportunity here for duplicating when I'm actually within a process definition. This overflow menu here will include the duplicate action. So you can invoke it from either within the process definition like we're seeing right now, or the home page like I previously demoed. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is jump into Playbook Experience. If you give me 1 second, I will open Playbook Experience preview. And then we'll set up a preview here so that we can run through a playbook. So we're going to look at incident because that is the process that we just showed in the PAD designer. We're going to take advantage of the record generator, and we're using our default global playbook experience. So you can see here, I'll show you the different layouts that we support today. So currently this shows the stacked layout. So within a configurable workspace, your agent will see this left navigational panel that summarizes the stages and a count of the activities within each of those stages. And the main activity viewer shows all of the activities within the current stage stacked on top of one another. We offer another layout called focused, and what this will do, As you can see, it will list out the names of each of the activities within the current stage, but then only show the current in progress activity UI one at a time. So focuses the agent in on the current activity.
That looks
We all
a lot helpful if you consider activities that may be more complex than just filling out 2 fields. So if there are more fields or even a map or something that you want to show, this view seems to be the choice.
absolutely couldn't have said it better, Lisa. We also have the opportunity to view this in compact mode. So this will essentially allow you to display this in the contextual sidebar in the event that you want to use the majority of your workspace real estate to display other information to your agents. So
is this the default, or can you also use the non-compact mode in the sidebar?
You can, this is the default.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the things that we mentioned before was playbook actions. We've got a declarative action here. So once we've completed this first step, we'll click continue and it will take us to the next activity within this stage.
We now have an incident number.
We do.
We now have a record.
We do, absolutely. So now you can also see that we have some playbook stage actions. We talked about declarative actions being the buttons that appear on your activity UIs. This is where you can, for example, add an activity. We went through the overview of optional activities, and this is how it can be added to a running process. So in stacked mode, we have these insertion points within our activity viewer. When selecting the place to insert your activity, any pre-configured activities that are available for this playbook will be presented. So in the event that I needed to escalate this incident for whatever reason, I choose the insertion point, select the activity, and then you can see here it's dynamically adding this step to my process, my playbook, as I'm running it. So Lisa, you had mentioned that maybe a playbook isn't needed, a particular activity is not needed for every execution of a playbook. Escalate is probably one of those scenarios.
Yeah.
So give your agents the flexibility to insert it wherever needed within your process. So that's exactly how we configured this demo. The escalate incident activity is available anywhere across the lifecycle of this process. And then we configured another one to email our caller. That's only available in the resolve stage. So as we complete our work and we're getting ready to close the incident, we reach back out to the caller to communicate. And so there is an optional activity to insert an email caller type of activity and presents a form to ultimately send an email. So for the time, for the sake of time, I'm going to pause the playbook run through right there, but you can see here, essentially what we're doing is taking the sequence of steps that an agent should follow to complete an incident, and we're breaking it up into discrete steps. So a little bit at a time, presenting UIs that are process aware. So what information is required at this point in my process, and presenting a UI to the end user so that they can complete the task at hand. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Lisa, so that you can talk about playbooks in UI Builder.
Yes. So just for context, this instance is on San Diego still, but it houses the process that I added to my CreatorCon app. So for the ones who did that, might feel familiar. The reason I did this is because I already have a custom activity UI created for my flow. This is an expense approval process. So there's an approval stage, and then the expense request will be fulfilled. And in one of the steps, we want to get a shipping address from the person, the requester. And generally, this looks rather simple. This would be a record. So this icon here will show that it is, let me see, activity definition, get shipping address. I'd have to go check what this looks like. So this is San Diego, as I said. I cannot see the experience settings back there. But what I can tell you is that this activity experience is of the type record. So as a basis, it will use the record activity UI. However, if we scroll far enough down or just switch the tab again, we will see that in the activity definition, there's a tab that is called Playbook Activity Overrides. And this is the place where you would click New to create a new entry. And then once you have this new entry, you can go ahead and configure that in UI Builder. So this overrides will, well, the name says it, override the default behavior, and you can give it a different look. The experience type is still record, so we want to make sure this only applies to the parent table, that is the expense request. We can give it different conditions. We can determine it only shows for certain activity states, certain associated tables, or certain activity definitions. So it's not just working for all of the record activities, but only for this specific activity definition. And then we can decide what we want to override. In this case, we want to override the activity UI of the shipping address activity. That being said, there's a button. It takes me to UI Builder. And in UI Builder, I can do all kinds of UI Builder things. And let me check chat while this loads. The wonderful thing about this is that in this page in UI Builder, we have a page that is called Custom Activity UI, and it'll house all of your different configurations. So if you create a new one for any of the other activities or any of your custom activities, you will find all of them in here. And then you can start to change them. I don't know why exactly it doesn't show up anymore. It showed shortly, but I want to show you what it should look like. I'm guessing this is because it's my test instance. The idea is to open this in UI Builder and then add a text container and then add a text that says this UI was configured for CreatorCon, and then you can save it. And the same should be showing up here. It doesn't necessarily do so, but I have my stylized text here, and it says this UI was configured for CreatorCon. That's pretty much all you need to know about custom activity UIs. You can drag and drop any other component if you want to. You can add another one, some kind of, I don't know, a text or action bar or a badge or a button. And then you can configure those buttons. You can save the page. And the next time that you run your process, where's the right window there? You would run the process. Those would show up for the shipping address activity. Now I'm a little confused, but I think you get the point. The second thing I wanted to show you is where to define the optional activity. And that is in a table for now. We're working on exposing that in Process Automation Designer that will come in an upcoming release. What I do here, and it's also described in the CreatorCon lab, is I go to the table that is called SysPD process definition. This is the form and list layout version of my process that I showed before. It has all of the lanes, and then it has the different activities listed here. And I added a manual activity, and that is, I added the activity in Process Automation Designer. Then I went to this list and changed the start rule to manual, and that's all. This is either a drop-down, you can list edit this, or you can go to the individual activity and then just change the start rule from after previous or immediately with previous. Those are the ones that you see in Process Automation Designer. You can switch this to manual, save the thing, and it'll be available just as Jason showed us in the Playbook preview. If you want to make this activity available on all of the lanes, you just remove this value, save the record, and you're done. So I think that is all we wanted to show in the demo, which is perfect timing wise. Let me check for more questions and share the presentation. Okay, Retta asks, how do I get to the CreatorCon lab? You check the lab, the event of this academy. It's on the community, how you signed up. And once I have uploaded the recording to YouTube next week, you will be able to find all of the resources in the community post. But also all of the resources are available in this slide deck. So I will share the slide deck with you as well. All of the docs, the academies, the Now Create white paper, which is really cool. And all of the videos and community posts, and of course, all of the training that is relevant to this on Now Learning are all linked in here. Okay, that's awesome. More questions? Andrew, have you learned something new today about Playbook Experience?
I think I didn't realize quite how much you could change, adding components and new fields and things to the Playbook activities is, I heard that you could do it, but I didn't see it like physically before. And so I wasn't sure how much you could do. And while your UI builder was not being helpful, I understood it by looking at your CreatorCon lab images. And that's really powerful.
Yeah, you can add pretty much anything. Like all of the components are there. You can add the fun stuff. You can connect it to the page. And one thing about the Playbook component as a whole is, remember, you can actually place the Playbook component on any UI builder page. You're not 100% bound to have it be in a configurable workspace. It can be any UI builder page. So going forward, when we look into the future, I can see guides for callers, for requesters. Maybe those those personas get stepped through a process more easily with a playbook. So it's not just tied to agents, but I can see that there's a lot of potential for different persona to use playbooks and Process Automation Designer as well. Yeah. Anything to add, Jason?
You're talking directly to the areas that we're exploring right now on our roadmap. We do have a lot of compelling use cases that involve multiple personas, both internal to an organization that's kind of driving the process, as well as its customers and end users. So we are definitely seeing that come to reality, and we will see a day where end users, customers, requester personas are interacting with playbooks.
That's awesome. That's brilliant. That's what we want to hear, right? We want to see this product grow and be adopted. And I really hope this session helped all of you gain more insight. I would love for you all to also check out the recording of the first session if you have missed it. Check out all of the training that is on Now Learning. Learn everything that you can about Process Automation Designer and Playbooks, and find out how you can use it to make the lives of your process users a lot easier, and the process owners as well. So with that, I will close out the poll. Do a small outlook. As I said, the next session in 2 weeks will be covering what's new in Tokyo for the Now platform. For more topics on our on my agenda, on my topic backlog, cover, among other things, some news about ATF. We have a new feature in ATF that is called Cloud Runner, and AI-driven test creation. I think those are very exciting topics for customers looking to adopt ATF, making the onboarding and the getting started with ATF tests much easier. We'll likely also have a session covering Admin Center and upgrade plans. Those are the topics that are currently planned for the coming sessions. I'd love to see you back. Thank you everybody for joining. This was a very interesting session, I think. I hope you will start using Process Automation Designer and Playbooks. And if you do, and when you do, feel free to reach out to me or to Jason. We'd love to hear your feedback and your use cases and how you're adopting it and how you're making lives easier. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jason, for joining me. Thank you, Andrew, for joining us. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me. Take care, everyone.